Outside, gray clouds hung low in the sky, mirroring my mood. Autumn was in full swing, and the cold wind whipped through the branches, sending the last leaves spiraling to the ground. I watched raindrops slowly slide down the window, thinking about how much things had changed. Once, quiet moments like these brought me peace, but now the silence felt too loud. It was as if nature itself reflected the tension building inside me, the storm on the horizon matching the turmoil in my own life. I felt trapped in this cycle of unease, the calm before something inevitable. The suitcase is in front of me, and I slowly zip it shut as James explains his plans. His voice sounds like it's coming from far away, drowned out by the rain. He's talking about work, about how busy he is, and why he can't join me and Josh on the islands just yet. Every word he says feels rehearsed, as if he's said it 100 times before and barely believes it anymore. "I'll catch up in a few days," he says, not lifting his eyes from his phone. "I wanted to get 2 houses, but it was too expensive, so just one. You'll like it." I nod, but inside something cracks. He always says that. In a few days. Those words used to hold the promise of a quick reunion, but now they feel empty. Everything between us has become colder, our conversations shorter. I hope this vacation will help us reconnect, but the worry lingers. What if it's just another broken promise? What if we're too far gone to fix what we once had? And then there's Josh. We've never been particularly close. His quietness always made things awkward, despite my efforts to bond with him. James insisted on this trip, saying it was a chance for us to get to know each other better. "You hardly spend any time together," he said, when he suggested sending us off. I agreed, but the idea of sharing a house with Josh makes me uneasy. The space between us always feels filled with something unsaid, an invisible barrier neither of us knows how to break. I try to convince myself it's nothing. It's just a short trip. We'll figure it out. But deep down, when I glance at Josh, standing calmly to the side, something feels off. I remember all our awkward conversations, the looks I used to brush off, and suddenly I feel anxious. Am I just overthinking things? The feeling has become stronger in recent months, like there's something I'm missing, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe it's just my imagination, or maybe it's the distance between all of us that's playing tricks on my mind. When James walks out without saying goodbye, I'm left alone with my thoughts. Once again, he's thrown himself into work, leaving me to deal with everything on my own. I hope this vacation really does change something in our lives, but even as I pack the last of my things, there's a part of me that doubts it. Maybe I'm just holding on to an idea of James that no longer exists. We arrived on the island smoothly, with no issues. The flight was short, and the transfer brought us straight to the beachfront resort. Everything was going as planned, but inside I couldn't shake the feeling that this trip wouldn't be as simple as I hoped. The air, though warm and fragrant, did little to calm my nerves. Every step I took on this new ground felt heavy, as though I was walking toward something inevitable, something I wasn't ready to face. When we got there, the air felt entirely different, fresh, filled with the salty ocean breeze and the scent of tropical plants. We stepped out of the car, and before us stood the house, right on the beach. The ocean was just a few steps away, its bright blue waves sparkling under the sun, while palm trees swayed lazily in the gentle wind. It was postcard perfect. Yet, standing there, all I could think about was how strange it felt to be here without James, how incomplete everything seemed. This was supposed to be a family vacation, but now it felt like I had stepped into a dream where something was always slightly off. For a moment, I felt a sense of relief. Being here, far from the mainland's busy and cold routine, I thought I could finally relax. But that feeling quickly gave way to unease. James wasn't here. And although his presence over the past few months had felt more obligatory than real, his absence weighed on me more than I expected. It was as if, in his absence, all the cracks in our relationship became visible, and I didn't know how to ignore them anymore. We stepped inside the house, and I was immediately drawn to the open, airy atmosphere. Spacious, sunlit rooms, a large terrace with a view of the ocean, cozy details. It had everything for the perfect getaway. I started to imagine how I could lose myself here for a few days. But then my eyes fell on the bed. One large, double bed. My heart skipped a beat. I frowned and quickly called the resort's administration, hoping it was some sort of mistake, but they told me they could only offer an extra mattress. The situation felt strange and a bit uncomfortable. It was a minor inconvenience, yet it seemed to symbolize the growing awkwardness between Josh and me. Josh, on the other hand, seemed completely at ease. He shrugged and looked at me. "We can share the bed if you don't mind. It's fine with me." His suggestion sounded so casual, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I felt a slight tension, but in the end I nodded, trying to push away the unsettling thoughts. It's no big deal, right? We're family, and it's just a bed. But I remembered the odd looks from Josh that I had noticed before, and my unease only grew. His presence was quiet but heavy, like a shadow that followed me, always just out of sight but never far away. To distract myself, I decided to step out onto the terrace and do some yoga. The fresh air and sound of the ocean should have helped me relax. I rolled out my mat, started with some light stretches, and soon felt the tension slowly leave my body. But then, I noticed Josh standing in the doorway, watching me closely. His gaze was appraising, and it stirred mixed feelings inside me. I felt a small thrill at the attention, but it also worried me. I liked it, but I tried to push those thoughts away. Why was I feeling this way? The idea made me uncomfortable, yet it lingered, like a whisper in the back of my mind that wouldn't go away. The next morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, I felt a sense of lightness fill the air. Josh and I decided to spend the day at the beach, taking full advantage of our first real day to unwind. The ocean was calm, its water sparkling in the sunlight, and the air was filled with the scent of salt and damp sand. Yet, even as the waves lapped gently at the shore, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting between us. It was subtle, but it was there, growing with each passing moment. Josh suggested we find a spot further from the other beachgoers, and soon we were settled on soft loungers. Everything felt quiet and peaceful. We sunbathed, shared jokes, and swapped stories. Josh brought over cocktails, and I took a few sips, feeling my body relax. But from time to time I noticed his gaze lingered on me a little longer than usual. I tried not to think too much of it, but those looks left a strange impression. It wasn't just the looks, but the way his presence seemed to wrap around me, drawing me in even when I tried to keep my distance. After lunch, Josh suggested we rent a jet ski. The idea sounded fun. I wanted something active and thrilling. We rented one for the two of us and headed toward the water. Josh took the controls first, and without hesitation I wrapped my arms around him to keep my balance. It felt natural, too natural, like slipping into something I had been avoiding for too long. As the jet ski sped up, adrenaline surged through me. It was exhilarating, and for a moment I forgot about everything else. But as I pressed against Josh, I caught myself feeling something more than just excitement from the ride. It was an unexpected rush, a small thrill I tried to ignore. I focused on the noise of the water and the wind, but my thoughts kept circling back to the moment when I wrapped my arms around him. Why did it feel different this time? Why was my heart racing? Not from fear or excitement, but from something much deeper, something I didn't want to acknowledge? When we switched places and I took the controls, Josh held onto my waist tightly. His grip was firmer than it needed to be, and it made me feel a little self-conscious. "Loosen up," I said, trying to keep my voice light. He let go slightly, but the easy feeling between us had already shifted. Something had changed, and I couldn't just brush it off. We weren't the same anymore, and pretending otherwise was becoming more difficult with each passing second. Every touch, every glance felt charged with something I couldn't name, but couldn't deny either. The next morning greeted us with a clear sky and warm sun, inviting us to go out and explore. Josh and I decided to hike to a waterfall that the locals had recommended. The trail wound through thick tropical forest, and each step on the soft ground was accompanied by the sounds of nature. Birds chirping, the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. At first, I felt calm, enjoying the greenery and the fresh forest air. Josh walked ahead of me, occasionally glancing back to make sure I was keeping up. But soon I began to notice that his looks were becoming more frequent, more intense. His eyes lingered on me longer than necessary, and it made me feel uneasy. I couldn't quite place what was happening. It seemed innocent enough, but something about his reactions and glances felt off, like they didn't belong. There was an energy between us that I couldn't ignore, but I didn't want to confront it either. When we reached the waterfall, it was as beautiful as promised. The water cascaded down, creating a white foam at the base, and the roar of the falls drowned out all other sounds. The air was thick with mist, cool and refreshing. We walked around to the back of the waterfall and stepped into a small cave hidden behind the curtain of water. The quiet inside the cave was a sharp contrast to the thunderous falls outside. In the narrow space, I felt a sudden tension, like the air had grown heavier. Josh turned to me, and before I could process what was happening, he stepped closer and suddenly leaned in, kissing me. Shock and confusion hit me all at once. Instinctively, I raised my hand and slapped him across the face. "What are you doing?" My voice was filled with disbelief and anger. Josh didn't say anything, just rubbed his cheek, and the silence between us was overwhelming. I couldn't believe what had just happened. The rest of the walk was spent in complete silence. I stared straight ahead, unable to even glance at him. I tried to justify his actions in my mind. Maybe he still hadn't accepted me as his new mom. He was 23, but I knew that being an adult didn't necessarily mean being mature. Perhaps he was still struggling to find his place in our new family dynamic? These thoughts didn't offer much comfort, but I clung to them, trying to explain away his behavior as confusion. Evening had come, and I sat on the terrace with a glass of wine in hand, dialing James's number. The ocean lapped gently before me, but inside my thoughts were anything but calm. I had no intention of mentioning what had happened with Josh at the waterfall. Even if I wanted to, I didn't know how to begin that conversation. Maybe it was just a one-time thing that would never happen again. When James answered, his voice was tired, but still warm. We exchanged the usual updates about how the day went, and I kept my tone light as I told him about the waterfall and our day at the beach. Of course, I left out what happened in the cave, sticking to safe details. "I'm really looking forward to seeing you," I said, trying to add some warmth to my voice. James responded confidently, "I'll be there sooner than you think. See you soon." His words made me freeze. Usually he would say something like, "in a few days," but now he was promising to come back sooner than expected. And suddenly I felt something unexpected. Did I really want him to come now? Or would it be better to have a little more time here with Josh, to sort through my emotions and what had happened? These thoughts stirred something unsettling inside me, maybe even fear. I tried to push them away, but they kept coming back, stronger each time. Was this because of what happened at the waterfall? Or was I just confused about my feelings toward James, trying to fill the void he left behind? I didn't know. The internal conflict grew. Yes, I loved James, but I couldn't ignore how much had changed. I wanted to figure it out, but every answer brought more uncertainty. After finishing the call, I sat there on the terrace, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The feeling of uncertainty grew with every passing moment. What did I truly want? James to come soon, or to stay here in this strange but enticing atmosphere that had developed between me and Josh? After the incident at the waterfall, I felt the need to ease the tension between Josh and me. That evening, gathering my thoughts, I decided to prepare a dinner. It was my way of trying to restore calm to our atmosphere and show that I wasn't angry with him. I made some simple dishes and, of course, opened a bottle of wine. When we sat down at the table, it was already dark outside, and the ocean quietly lapped against the shore. I tried to keep things casual, and it seemed to work. We sipped our wine, exchanged jokes, and laughed, gradually forgetting the awkwardness we had felt the day before. The conversation became easier, and I noticed that Josh was also relaxing. He laughed, made light comments, and soon the atmosphere was filled with a friendly warmth. I felt encouraged by this, and perhaps I had managed to shift our relationship back to something more comfortable. After dinner, once the dishes were cleared, Josh suggested watching a movie. I agreed, though I was still somewhat hesitant. We settled into bed, propping pillows behind us, and I turned on the film. At first, everything was fine, but soon I felt him reach for me and pull me closer. In that moment, the same complicated energy surged back, one I couldn't ignore. I tried to focus on the screen, but thoughts of our recent incident returned with each passing minute. His arm rested on my shoulder, and I could feel the warmth of his body, stirring excitement within me. I wanted to push those feelings away, yet there was an undeniable pull that was growing stronger. "Is it okay if I scoot a little closer?" he asked, though it felt more like a statement than a question. I merely nodded, unsure of what to say. When he pulled me against him, my heart raced. I tried to brush off my feelings, but in that moment, a wave of emotions overwhelmed me. I understood I had crossed a line again, and something had to change. But instead, I remained caught in this tense state, one that was increasingly consuming me. The movie continued to play, but I was finding it harder to focus on the plot. The closeness with Josh, his warmth and confidence were becoming increasingly palpable, and the tension between us had reached its peak. Every time I caught his gaze out of the corner of my eye, something inside me bubbled up. At one point, the screen went dark and the room was enveloped in semi-darkness. I turned to say something, but in that moment, Josh leaned in, his lips brushing against mine. It was a soft yet insistent kiss that made my heart race. "Why do you resist?" he whispered, just a heartbeat away. "There's only a 10-year difference between us. Why not give it a try?" My mind screamed for me to stop, but my body seemed to have made its own decision to give in. In those seconds, all my doubts evaporated, leaving only the intense desire I had been trying to suppress. I didn't know how to react. It felt wrong, yet at the same time, when his lips met mine, everything felt so natural. At first, I tried to pull away, but then I surrendered to the pull. Time seemed to freeze and everything around us faded away. It was just the two of us, and in those moments, I forgot about everything that had been troubling me. We spent passionate time together, filled with sparks and energy, immersing ourselves in a world of feelings that was impossible to ignore. Only when dawn began to break, and soft rays of light filtered through the windows, did we finally fall asleep, exhausted but happy. In that moment, as I closed my eyes, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. I woke up to the sound of footsteps coming from the hallway. The silence around me was broken only by those footsteps, creating an unsettling feeling. I glanced at my phone and saw numerous missed calls. I hadn't heard them due to the deep sleep following the wild night. It seemed James had returned sooner than he promised. My heart raced as I heard him approach the bedroom. Suddenly the door opened and he stepped inside. I froze, meeting his gaze, and in that moment he noticed the scene. I lay in bed, and Josh was wrapped around me, our bodies covered only by a blanket. In an instant, it became clear to James. Confusion flashed in his eyes, quickly replaced by fury. He shouted, "What's going on here?" I didn't even have time to open my mouth to explain. All my attempts to justify myself were stuck in my throat as he continued to yell at us, accusing us of betrayal and destroying the family. His voice hit me like a bolt of lightning, leaving behind a void and fear. "I trusted you, and you—" His words struck deep, and I felt panic rising within me. He was so enraged that he didn't want to hear a single word from me. I realized that his decisions were already made, and everything had changed in an instant. How could I fix this now? I had no idea what to do. All I could do was sit there in complete confusion and fear, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The scandal that erupted in the room left me in complete confusion. James, with fury in his eyes, turned to Josh. He wasn't just angry, he was livid. I tried to gather my thoughts, but each word he spoke cut like a knife. "You're not getting another dime from me," James declared, pointing at Josh. His voice was cold as ice. "All your bank cards are disabled. You need to go back to your mother. Your schooling and previous life are over." I felt my heart constrict. I couldn't believe this was happening. Josh stood before us, looking lost and scared. His eyes darted between me and James, and I realized how difficult this moment was for him. "James, don't make decisions like this based on emotion," I cried, trying to intervene. "You can't just strip him of everything." But James remained steadfast. His expression didn't change, and his words sounded like a verdict. "I'm filing for divorce," he stated, and that phrase struck me like a lightning bolt. I froze, unsure how to react. In that moment, it felt as if my entire world was crumbling. "Please don't," I tried to say, but James had already turned away, unwilling to listen. I realized that everything was spiraling out of control, and bringing it all back would be impossible. I looked at Josh, standing beside me, and understood that both of our lives had already been turned upside down. We were both trapped, but at that moment neither of us had the answers. James's words still echoed in my ears like thunder. He had announced the divorce, and in his voice, I heard a determination that terrified me. The threats of losing all rights to our property and his financial support were another storm brewing in my life. I sat in silence, trying to process what had happened. The thought that I had brought all this upon myself tormented me. How could I have done this? All those years with James, everything I had built, was now shattered by one single choice. I looked out the window where the sunset painted the sky in bright shades of orange and purple. Those colors seemed alien to me at that moment, as if they had nothing to do with what was happening inside. I thought about how my life could have turned out if I had resisted temptation. Perhaps I would still be the woman lovingly cooking dinner for her husband, dreaming of a future together. Instead, I found myself here, surrounded by the ruins of my decisions. Dark thoughts swirled within me, and I realized I would now have to face the consequences. I felt lonely and lost. Thoughts of Josh, of how he too had suffered, washed over me, but I couldn't allow myself to feel pity for him. I was trapped in the web of my own actions. What was I supposed to do next? I tried to imagine how to rebuild, but every option felt wrong. I had lost not only James, but also a part of myself. I tried to sort through my emotions, but with each passing moment I felt it might be too late. The guilt constricted me, and the fear of what lay ahead only grew. How could everything change so quickly? Inside me, a storm of conflicting feelings raged, a desire to turn back time, fear of what awaited me, and the realization that I was alone in this madness. I knew I had to face the consequences of my actions, but accepting that was incredibly difficult. I sat on the edge of the bed, and memories of James, of our beginning, began to flood my mind. I remember when I first met him. He was confident, charismatic, and reliable, with a charm that was impossible to resist. His laughter reminded me of sunny days, and his eyes were full of life. Thinking back to our first dates, I felt joy swell within me. We walked for hours, discussing everything under the sun, sharing dreams and secrets. Each moment was filled with anticipation and hope as I realized I was falling deeper in love with him. Every meeting felt like a celebration, and it seemed as though life had truly become beautiful. We built our relationship step by step, with each new experience only strengthening our bond. I felt happy as we talked about our future together, dreaming of family and a home. These memories helped me see just how much my life had changed since then. But now, looking back, I realized that our love had gradually faded. James's work consumed him, and he delved deeper into his career, leaving me alone. I often felt invisible, as if I were dissolving into the gray routine of life while his attention was focused on other priorities. Now, in light of everything that had happened, I understood how my current actions had shattered our marriage and family life, which once seemed perfect. The guilt over betraying James overwhelmed me. Yet I couldn't ignore the growing attraction to Josh that had become so strong it wouldn't let me rest. I realized that my desire for novelty and passion with Josh was an attempt to fill the void that had formed in my life with James. It was a distorted reflection of what I was truly seeking, and every moment with Josh only deepened my internal conflict. I was torn between two worlds, and I didn't know how to escape this labyrinth. After everything that had happened, I sank into a deep depression. Each morning I woke up with a heavy feeling, and thoughts of how I had destroyed my life and the lives of those close to me haunted me. I understood that my decisions had led to complete ruin: divorce, loss of my husband's trust, the destruction of my family. Each day felt meaningless, and daily tasks only brought a sense of despair. I felt utterly empty. Everything that had once brought joy now appeared gray and hollow. I didn't know how to move forward. Each morning was a struggle, and I was losing hope that I could change anything. How had I allowed it all to come to this? I sat alone, pondering how things could have been different had I made other choices. Josh was also suffering from the consequences. Deprived of financial support and his father's relationship, he realized he had lost everything he once had. His actions had destroyed not only our relationship but also his closeness with James. I could sense that he felt isolated and alone. Returning to his biological mother meant leaving behind everything he had worked for. His vibrant student life was now a thing of the past, and the future loomed dark and uncertain. James was going through a hard time too. The betrayal cut deep. He felt betrayed by both his wife and son. His trust in those closest to him had been shattered. I knew that it was his idea to send Josh and me away together that had led to this disaster. Now he was in a state of despair, realizing that his attempt to mend our family relationships had resulted in the destruction of everything he had considered important. We were all trapped in a cycle where none of us could find a way out. I understood that we each faced a long and difficult journey ahead, and the hopes for a better future seemed increasingly elusive.